The moment the eyes walked into the school, everything changed. The atmosphere instantly became tense, silent, and uncomfortable. Even the aunts looked nervous, and that alone tells you how terrifying the eyes truly are in the testaments. Usually, the aunts are the ones controlling fear inside Gilead. They're respected, protected, and feared by everyone beneath them. But when the eyes arrive, even powerful people suddenly start acting carefully. And for Daisy, this moment feels like the beginning of the end. At first, Daisy immediately assumes the eyes are there because of her. She believes they finally discovered that she has been secretly working with Mayday. Honestly, viewers probably thought the same thing. Daisy has been taking enormous risks for several episodes now. She has been hiding a forbidden radio, secretly communicating with the outside world, and pretending to fully accept Gilead while constantly lying to everyone around her. In a society built on surveillance and paranoia, that kind of double life can only survive for so long. But what makes this scene even more interesting is that Daisy is not the only person reacting nervously. Aunt Vidala also appears shaken when the eyes arrive, and that detail feels extremely important. Vidala usually carries herself with confidence and authority. She's harsh, intimidating, and completely loyal to Gilead on the surface. So seeing her uncomfortable immediately raises questions. What exactly is she afraid of? And honestly, I think the show is quietly hinting that Vidala may know about Aunt Lydia's secret diary. That diary could end up being one of the most dangerous objects in all of Gilead. Lydia has secretly been documenting the rise of Gilead, the crimes committed by the commanders, and the corruption hidden beneath the regime's religious image. In a society where women are forbidden from reading and writing, those writings are basically illegal evidence against the entire system. The only reason Lydia can even maintain the diary is because aunts are granted privileges that ordinary women are denied. But if the eyes ever discovered those writings, Lydia would almost certainly be executed immediately. That's why Vidala's nervous reaction matters so much. The episode never confirms she knows about the diary, but it definitely feels like the show is planting seeds. Maybe Vidala fears the eyes are investigating the aunts themselves. Maybe she suspects Lydia is hiding something dangerous. Or maybe she has secrets of her own. Whatever the truth is, the scene works because it reminds viewers that nobody in Gilead is ever completely safe. But then the episode reveals something even worse. The eyes are not there for the aunts. They're there for the Pearl Girls. And suddenly, Daisy realizes she is still directly in danger. That twist completely changes the tension of the episode, because now the investigation becomes personal. The Pearl Girls are supposed to represent purity, obedience, and loyalty to Gilead. They recruit girls and help spread the regime's ideology. So if the eyes suspect one of them is connected to Mayday, that means Gilead's paranoia is growing stronger. The regime is starting to believe that enemies may already exist inside its own system. And honestly, Daisy has been dangerously close to exposure for a while now. Every time she used that hidden radio, she risked everything. One signal could be traced. One mistake could expose her identity. Episode 7 finally shows the consequences of living under constant surveillance. In Gilead, secrets never stay hidden forever. The interrogation scene with Commander Weston is easily one of the most uncomfortable moments in the episode. What makes it so effective is that Weston doesn't act openly threatening at first. He's calm, polite, and almost casual while questioning Daisy. But that's exactly what makes him dangerous. People in Gilead rarely need to scream to maintain power. The fear already exists before they even enter the room. Weston starts asking Daisy about her life in Canada and how she ended up in Gilead. On the surface, the questions sound harmless, but Daisy immediately understands what is really happening. Weston is testing her story. He's trying to see whether her emotions and responses feel genuine. One wrong answer could expose her immediately. And Daisy knows it. That's why she carefully shifts the conversation toward the Pearl Girls saving her. She's trying to sound grateful and loyal to the system. But Weston quickly interrupts her and says that God saved her, not the Pearl Girls. That moment perfectly captures how Gilead controls people psychologically. Even gratitude has to follow the regime's approved narrative. You're not allowed to praise individuals or personal choices. Everything must point back toward God and Gilead's ideology. Daisy understands the trap instantly, so she agrees with him without hesitation, because survival in Gilead depends on performance. Nobody can truly relax. Every conversation feels like a test. Every emotional reaction can be analyzed. Even silence can look suspicious. And Daisy is slowly realizing how exhausting it is to constantly pretend to be someone else. But despite how calm she appears during the interrogation, Daisy is panicking internally the entire time, because then she notices something terrifying sitting on Weston's desk: her radio. That single detail changes everything. Until that moment, Daisy probably still hoped her secret compartment had not been discovered. Maybe the eyes were investigating someone else. Maybe she still had time. But seeing the radio confirms the truth immediately. The eyes found it. And honestly, this is where the episode becomes emotionally devastating. The radio wasn't discovered in Daisy's bed. It was found in the bed beside hers. That detail saves Daisy's life, but it destroys someone else's instead. Near the end of the episode, the Pearl Girl sleeping next to Daisy is taken away by the eyes because the evidence points toward her. They assume she's the one connected to Mayday. In Gilead, suspicion alone is enough to ruin someone's life forever. And Daisy knows the girl is innocent. She knows the radio belonged to her, but she says nothing. Now, realistically, Daisy cannot confess. If she admits the truth, her mission is over immediately. She would almost certainly be executed, and anyone connected to Mayday could also be exposed. Rationally, staying silent is the only way to survive. But emotionally, the guilt is crushing. And honestly, that guilt is what makes Daisy such a strong character. She isn't a fearless hero who always knows the right thing to do. She's terrified almost constantly. She's surviving one moment at a time inside a system designed to break people psychologically. That's the real horror of Gilead. Not just the violence or public punishments, but the way the system forces ordinary people into impossible choices. Either sacrifice yourself or allow someone else to suffer. Over time, survival becomes more important than morality because fear controls every decision. The innocent Pearl Girl being taken away also shows how dangerously close Daisy is now to exposure. Earlier in the season, she still had some protection through secrecy and confusion. But now, the eyes are actively investigating illegal communication. They're interrogating girls individually. They're searching rooms and tracing suspicious activity. The walls are clearly closing in around Daisy. And honestly, after this episode, it's hard to imagine Daisy surviving much longer without making a mistake. Pressure changes people. The more terrified Daisy becomes, the harder it will be for her to keep performing loyalty perfectly. Fear creates emotional cracks, and the emotional cracks are dangerous in Gilead because the regime constantly watches for weakness. That's also why the parallel between Daisy and Aunt Lydia becomes so interesting in this episode. Both women are secretly working against Gilead in different ways. Both are hiding dangerous truths, and both understand that exposure means death. But the difference is experience. Lydia has spent years learning how to manipulate the system from inside. She understands how commanders think. She knows how to survive politically. Daisy, meanwhile, is still emotionally reacting to the horror around her. She hasn't fully learned how to hide her fear yet. And honestly, Lydia's diary may eventually become the single most important weapon against Gilead, because Gilead survives by controlling information. It rewrites history, silences women, and destroys evidence. But Lydia's writings preserve the truth. If those writings ever escape Gilead, they could expose the corruption behind the entire regime. And I think episode 7 quietly hints that Gilead itself may be more fragile than it appears. The regime is becoming paranoid. The eyes are becoming more aggressive. Investigations are increasing. And authoritarian systems usually become most dangerous when they begin sensing instability beneath the surface. That's why this episode feels so tense, even though very little physical action actually happens. The fear comes from uncertainty. Nobody knows who is being watched. Nobody knows who might betray them. Nobody even knows if simple conversations are safe anymore. The eyes don't just punish people. They create psychological terror. Their presence alone changes how everyone behaves. Even powerful people become nervous around them. And honestly, that kind of fear is more effective than violence because eventually people start policing themselves before the regime even has to step in. That's exactly what Gilead wants, a society where citizens become so afraid of suspicion that they silence themselves automatically. And Daisy is slowly being crushed under that pressure. By the end of the episode, she survives physically, but emotionally, she looks exhausted. Watching an innocent girl get dragged away because of her actions is clearly destroying her internally. But she can't even openly mourn because too much emotion could make her look suspicious too. That's what makes her situation so tragic.